reading exercise for the week, Luke chapter 7, and we are looking into the plot line of the story. So it starts off with the normal world. We are in Capernaum, and everything's normal there as it is every day. You've got a large, diverse type of people, from tax collectors, Jewish elders, soldiers, Greek soldiers that are occupying the area, keeping the peace, and you have slaves that are serving their masters. And it's a pretty busy city, businessmen, fishermen. Everything's pretty much in the normal. And then there's a hint of trouble. And the hint of trouble is noticed when we see the Greek soldier not doing the normal. He's seeking out the Jewish elders. And we know he's doing that to send them to Jesus, to ask for this centurion slave to be healed, which is also strange that these Jewish elders would go out of their way for the centurion soldier, and that they would actually seek help from Jesus, which is also different from what normally takes place. These are all hints that something is not right, or there's trouble around the corner. So the other thing that we notice, the hint of trouble, is that the master is caring for his slave, which is unheard of. Not only is this master caring for his slave, which is a Greek centurion soldier, but we find out later on that he had actually built him a synagogue. He had built the synagogue for the Jews with his own money. And so those things are abnormal. You would be, if you were in that city, you probably people would notice, if they're paying attention, that these things are different from what's normal. And so that's the hint of trouble. And of course, trouble arrives. Well, that's always when Jesus shows up, right? He shows up with all his followers. And he's not the trouble, but there always seems to be trouble that follows him. And the other trouble that we see in our story here is that this centurion, his slave, though he would normally discard him being a centurion, which would make sense, which again is something that was another hint of trouble. But that being said, this centurion was taking care of his slave, and his slave is dying. And so this is the part of the story where we see trouble arriving, when we see this centurion getting to the point where he's going to die. And Jesus is a Jew. He has authority. And so you think that the centurion would be discouraged, that he would, that the trouble for him would be that Jesus is a man of authority. He's a Jew. And it's going to be impossible for this Greek soldier to communicate with this guy. Their worlds are so far apart. And but the way it is we see some cool things happen. The first things that we learn is that we learn of the faith of the centurion. He had faith in Jesus, and we see how much he had faith. And it wasn't just faith in Jesus, but it was faith in what Jesus could do. He didn't allow the situation to swallow his faith, but he placed his faith in Jesus despite all the odds, or despite any situation that arose that would try to get in the way. He looked past that. He had his eyes fixed on Jesus. as Peter was told by Jesus to not look at the waves, but to fix his eyes upon him. And so we see also that what we learn is Jesus is faithful, that he'll never let us down, and nothing is impossible, no matter what it looks like with God. So help arrives, and we see help that is given when we see that Jesus has come, and Jesus is willing, and with the word of his mouth, Jesus heals the slave. And so help has come. Jesus heals the slave from his dying sickness. And our world changes. Our world changes. The way I apply that is that we see the faith of one person, one man that day, that centurion. And because of his faith, one man, the walls that were broke down, the walls of diversity that were crossed. And we see that there was life that was given to the dying. So if we can have faith, if we can learn from the centurion, if we get our eyes off of ourselves, if we can place our faith in Jesus, no matter the cost, no matter what things may appear, our world can change, just like their world changed. The walls of diversity will fall, and those that are dying in their sin, they can find forgiveness, and they will find eternal life. Just as in the book of Acts, the disciples were accused of turning the world upside down for Jesus. That's what will happen if we put faith in Jesus. And that's what happened for the slave of the centurion today. God bless you guys, and have a good night.